Nobody scripted this, and that's exactly why it still gives people chills months later, because there was no press release, no publicist's calendar, no carefully staged photo op waiting to happen. It just unfolded in real time in front of thousands of people who had no idea they were watching history get made. And to understand why this moment still matters, we need to rewind to July 2nd, 2026, a date that tennis fans in the Philippines and beyond are going to be talking about for years. Because that was the day the Princess of Wales walked straight into the middle of Alex Eala's Wimbledon story without anyone planning it that way, and the way she did it tells you almost as much as the moment itself. So picture the grounds of the All England Club that morning, packed with the usual mix of Wimbledon lifers and first-time visitors and the diehards who had queued through the night just for a shot at a ticket. And if you know anything about Wimbledon culture, you know that queue is basically sacred. People show up the evening before, pitch tents, brave whatever miserable weather London throws at them, and wait it out just to say they were there. These aren't casual tourists, these are people who love this tournament enough to sacrifice a night's sleep for it. And on that particular morning something happened in that line that nobody in it could have predicted, because the person handing out the tickets wasn't a staff member or a volunteer in a polo shirt, it was Catherine, Princess of Wales, the actual patron of the All England Club, a role she inherited from Queen Elizabeth back in 2016, and there she was, standing at the front of the queue, personally handing tickets to people who had slept on pavement overnight, smiling at each one, turning what's usually a rushed transactional moment into something that felt personal. And if you stop and think about what that choice actually represents, it gets more interesting, because she didn't have to do any of this. She could have arrived through a private entrance, been whisked to the royal box, watched from a polished distance, waved at the right moments, and left by early afternoon. That's the standard script for royal appearances at events like this, a script that exists for good reason, but she ripped it up entirely. She got in line with the fans, handed out tickets herself, and then instead of heading up to the royal box like tradition demanded, she took a seat down in the stands on court 1, sitting next to Andy Murray and former British #1 and Kia Thaving, watching tennis unfold from ground level instead of a comfortable perch above it. And for someone in her position, that's not a minor detail, that's a deliberate decision to be inside the moment rather than observing it from a safe distance. And as it turned out, the moment she chose to be inside of included Alex Eala, because July 2nd was also the day Alex faced Maya Joint in the second round, and that match ended up being one of the wildest swings of her entire tournament. Joint wasn't some soft draw either. Just 2 days earlier she had knocked out Serena Williams in the first round, one of the most talked about upsets of the entire fortnight. And she walked into her match against Alex riding that exact kind of confidence you get after doing something nobody expected. The head-to-head leaned Joint's way, the momentum leaned Joint's way, and when the first set slipped away 6-3, it genuinely looked like Alex's run might be over before it really got started, and then something shifted. She took the second set 6-2, and then she absolutely demolished the third set 6-love, a complete bagel against the player who had just eliminated Serena Williams on grass. And that's not the kind of scoreline you get from simply surviving, that's a statement, that's a player announcing she's not here by accident. And all of this was happening on the exact same afternoon the Princess of Wales was wandering the grounds handing out tickets and sitting among the crowd like someone who genuinely wanted to be there instead of performing the role of being there. And somewhere in the chaos of that comeback win, in the middle of a historic run and the specific electricity that only Wimbledon can generate on a day like that, Alex found herself standing next to the Princess of Wales for a photo, and she posted it herself, straight to her Instagram story, the most immediate and unfiltered way you can share something like this, with a caption that read exactly like what it was, a 21-year-old having the best week of her career and being completely honest about that in real time. She called it an honor to grab a picture with Her Royal Highness, no PR polish, no carefully drafted statement. Just someone who had beaten the player who beat Serena Williams now sharing a frame with British royalty and wanting her followers to know it actually happened. And there was a third person tucked into that photo too, Bianca Andreescu's countrywoman and fellow tour player Zeynep Sonmez, Alex's actual friend on tour, included simply because she was there and because that's who Alex is. She doesn't crop out the people she's genuinely with, she pulls them into the frame, and that small detail tells you something real about her character that tends to get buried under all the noise about royalty and results. but it's worth sitting with for a second, and naturally the photo spread fast, the way photos do when they combine two completely unexpected elements colliding in the same frame, two people from entirely different worlds connected by one afternoon at the most. Famous tennis tournament on the planet, caught in a moment neither of them planned but both were clearly fully present for, and that's exactly why it traveled the way it did, because it wasn't staged, because it told a story in a single image that no press release could have manufactured no matter how hard it tried. And then just 2 days later, the story got a whole lot bigger. July 4th, third round of Wimbledon. Alex facing Iga Swiatek, world number 3, the reigning champion, 6 grand Slam titles to her name, the same player who had won this exact tournament 12 months earlier while dropping just 12 games across the entire final, a scoreline so lopsided it barely qualified as competitive, and nobody was writing Alex off by this point because the tennis world had already started paying close attention to what she was building at this tournament. But nobody was picking her as the comfortable favorite either, because facing Swiatek on grass, defending her title, is about as tough an assignment as women's tennis can hand you, and Alex walked out and won the first set in a tiebreak that stretched all the way to 11 points to 9, then followed it up by taking the second set 6-2 with a level of composure and clean ball striking that the post-match numbers confirmed wasn't some lucky afternoon. 21 unforced errors from Alex compared to 44 from the defending champion. 5 breaks of serve, 68% of points won on Swiatek's second serve, and those numbers paint a picture of one player being dramatically more in control than the other, and the player in control was a 21-year-old from Quezon City standing in the single biggest match of her career, and when the last point landed and the crowd was still processing what they just watched, Alex stepped up to the microphone and talked about being a kid back in the Philippines, training after school every single day with her brother and her grandfather. Ruffled socks, light-up shoes, chubby cheeks, and just a pure love for hitting a tennis ball. And she said that for someone like Swiatek, a loss like this might register as a minor bump in the road, but for someone who grew up the way she did, this was everything. And then she caught herself and told the crowd flat out that she wasn't satisfied. Next round, let's go, her words. And after that the reaction came from every direction at once, and it came fast. Wimbledon's own Instagram account posted the clip and captioned it with 3 words that felt strikingly unguarded for an official tournament account. Alex is the moment, not the usual sanitized tournament language, but an actual acknowledgement from the institution itself that something special was happening on its own courts, and then the wider world piled on. Filipino celebrities lit up social media, actors and hosts posting genuine excitement rather than the performative kind you sometimes see. Manny Pacquiao, arguably the most recognizable Filipino athlete alive, posted nothing but a Philippine flag and 2 raised hands, no caption necessary. The flag said everything that needed saying, and then Maria Sharapova showed up in the comments, 5 Grand Slam titles, one of the most iconic names in the history of women's tennis, and also, as it happens, Alex's childhood idol, someone she has an old photo with from when she was barely old enough to understand who she was standing next to, and here was Sharapova, publicly acknowledging in the comments that what she was witnessing was real, and a 5-time major champion doesn't just casually comment on a third-round Wimbledon result unless something about it genuinely caught her attention. That's not the reaction flukes or lucky draws or off-day opponents generate. That's recognition from someone who has spent her entire career at the top of the sport and knows what she's looking at when she sees it. And now let's circle back to the royal thread for a moment, because it's tempting to treat that appearance as a charming side note running parallel to the tennis story, but there's something worth digging into about why these 2 threads feel so connected even though technically they have nothing to do with each other. Because Catherine's decision on July 2nd was fundamentally about refusing distance from something real. She could have shown up in the traditional royal sense, box seat, gentle waves, comfortable proximity without any of the actual mess of real contact. But she picked the cue instead. She picked the stands instead. She chose to be woven into the actual texture of a Wimbledon day rather than positioned above it. And that choice put her in the exact same emotional space Alex was occupying. Because Alex's entire story at this tournament has been about that same principle. She isn't playing Wimbledon from a safe distance, she's dead in the middle of it, dropping a set to the woman who just beat Serena Williams and clawing back with a 6-love bagel, walking out against a 6-time major champion under the heaviest scrutiny of her career and executing a game plan that actually worked. She is as present as a competitor can possibly be, and on a day when both of them independently chose presence over ceremony, reality over polished performance, they ended up sharing a single photograph. And that's not some cosmic coincidence. It's simply what happens when two people who've both decided to be fully in the middle of something end up occupying the same physical space at the same moment. And if you zoom out and lay the full 48 hours side by side, the pacing genuinely feels cinematic. Day 1, Alex drops a set against the player who dethroned Serena and roars back to win. The next 2, including that 6-love statement set, reaching the 3rd round in the process, and on that same day the Princess of Wales spends her time at the tournament handing out tickets in line and sitting among fans instead of royalty, and the two of them wind up in a photo Alex shares within hours, unfiltered and unplanned. Then there's a rest day where the tennis world sits with both stories simultaneously while anticipation builds for the Swiatek showdown, and then day 3 arrives. And Alex walks out and beats the defending champion in straight sets, becoming the first Filipino player in the Open era to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam, earning a public nod from her childhood idol in the comments, a wordless flag emoji from the most famous Filipino athlete alive, and a caption from Wimbledon's own account that simply says she is the moment. And that's an enormous amount of significance packed into 48 hours for a 21-year-old from Quezon City who used to train after school in mismatched socks with her brother and grandfather cheering her on. And none of it was manufactured, the royal encounter wasn't planned. Sharapova's comment wasn't requested, Wimbledon's caption wasn't scripted in advance, Pacquiao's flag needed no publicist pulling strings behind the scenes. These things happened because something genuinely compelling was unfolding on those courts and in those stands and in that early morning queue. And genuine moments tend to pull genuine reactions out of people who recognize them when they see them. And there's another layer worth mentioning here too, because in the days right before Wimbledon, Catherine had just completed a grueling 24-hour version of the National Three Peaks Challenge, one of the more physically demanding charity events out there, raising money for the Royal Marsden Cancer Charity, and she came straight to Wimbledon from that effort, likely still running on the mix of exhaustion and satisfaction that kind of challenge leaves behind. And her choice once she arrived was still to be among people instead of above them, handing out tickets, sitting in the stands, watching tennis like someone who came because the tennis actually mattered to her, not because an appearance was mandatory, and that context makes the cue moment and the court 1 seat and the photo with Alex all feel like extensions of the same underlying impulse. Someone who had just done something demanding for a cause that mattered, choosing to spend her first day at Wimbledon in that exact same spirit, present and unguarded rather than ceremonial and remote. And when you step back and look at everything Alex built during this tournament, the comeback against Joint, the spontaneous photo, the win over the defending champion, the reactions from Sharapova and Pacquiao and Wimbledon itself, you're looking at a player who crossed a line that's genuinely difficult to walk back over. Before this tournament, she was a talented young player with a compelling story and a growing fan base who believed in what she was building. And after this tournament, she's something else entirely. She's the first Filipino player in the Open era to reach a Grand Slam 4th round. She's the woman who beat the defending Wimbledon champion on one of the biggest stages in the sport. She's the 21-year-old who stood at a microphone after the win of her life and talked about her grandfather and light-up shoes and then told everyone watching that she still wasn't satisfied. She's the player in that photograph with the Princess of Wales that nobody arranged and everybody noticed. Anyway, and none of that gets erased once the tournament ends, none of it gets rewritten by whoever eventually lifts the trophy that year. It's permanently stitched into the history of this event and into the history of Filipino tennis and into the specific story of a girl who left for Spain at 13 years old chasing a dream that the people closest to her believed in long before the rest of the world caught up. And the world has caught up now, and the way it caught up, through spontaneous moments instead of manufactured ones, through an unplanned photo and an honest Instagram caption and an unguarded tournament post and a flag emoji from a boxing legend and a comment from a childhood hero. is exactly what makes this Wimbledon run so significant when you look at the full arc of her career. And what comes next is the hardcourt swing, starting in Washington toward the end of July and building all the way to the US Open in late August, the same tournament where she won the junior title back in 2022, and where this career could take its next major leap. And she's heading into that stretch ranked higher than she's ever been, with a serve that one of the greatest players in tennis history has already flagged as the exact area where improvement would make her seriously dangerous. And with a belief system that just got tested under the most intense conditions of her career and held up completely, she's walking into that season as someone the draw respects, someone opponents now specifically prepare for, someone commentary teams track through. Every single round, she's walking in as someone who's already been in the photograph, made the history, delivered the speech, and earned the ovation, and she's walking in as someone who, after the biggest win of her life, immediately said she wasn't satisfied and asked for the next round. And that combination, the results paired with the belief paired with the refusal to treat any single moment as a finish line rather than a stepping stone, is exactly what the sharpest observers in this sport have been watching take shape across this entire fortnight. Maria Sharapova saw it in the comments section, the commentary booth saw it when they broke down a technical read that doubled as a blueprint for what comes next. Even longtime tennis royalty in the stands reportedly said something about her they'd apparently never said about anyone else. Manny Pacquiao saw it in a flag and 2 raised hands, and the Princess of Wales, on a morning she chose the queue over the royal box, happened to be standing in the exact same space when it was all unfolding, and a photograph exists now to prove that both of them were there on the same day, doing the same thing in completely different ways, being fully and genuinely present without a hint of performance. And whatever this tournament ultimately produced in ranking points or prize money or record books, that photo and everything wrapped up inside it is already a permanent part of the story, and the next chapters, the ones waiting to be written in Washington and at the US Open and across whatever Grand Slams follow over the next decade of what is clearly shaping up to be a remarkable career, are still ahead of her. She told everyone watching she wasn't satisfied, and she meant every word of it. The next round, wherever it lands and whoever it's against, is already circled on the calendar. And based on everything the tennis world just watched unfold across Wimbledon 2026, it's going to be worth paying very close attention to, whatever she does next.